Hey, Silvio Paisano here. We're back with the Brunton Vapor AF Expedition Stove. We're going to take this stove on a brief light test today. We have it connected to the original tank that came with the product, and it is filled with white gas. The gas in there is a Catalog House home brand. You guys can experiment with what kind of gas you'd like to use, but it's a pretty standard one. You're going to want to make sure of a couple things before you actually light the stove. You want to make sure both of your valves are turned clockwise and completely off. Then you want to pump pressure into your tank. I found it most successful to pump this enough to where the plunger actually doesn't get all the way back in. That let me know that there was a good amount of pressure. And if you got it to that point and you have to pack up and go, if you just push slowly, it'll go back in. So that's as good as it's going to be. One of the selling points for this stove is its ability to go from fuel or liquid gas over to a pressurized butane propane canister. And that's achieved by just changing this collar, as we've gone over in the other video. You want to make sure that that's positioned in the right place. Underneath there's a G and an L, obviously for liquid and gas. You have to make sure that's going to be slid into the correct place for the fuel you're using. You start by opening that first valve all the way. It'll stop when it gets to its most open position. And then here's where a little bit of finesse comes in. You're going to want to put a little bit of this fuel into the stove to prime it. Now, that could be easier said than done if you've never primed a stove before. I'm going to turn this around. As with most stoves, there's a cotton section for some of the fuel to come out of the line and saturate. Just above my finger, it's really the only angle I could give you to see that. There's a white saucer of cotton, which we're going to saturate with some of the fuel. I'm going to try and not talk over this to see if you can hear it. You prime this stove by very gently turning open the second knob and letting a little fuel flow into the stove itself and saturate that cotton. Okay, I don't know if you heard that little squirt there, but I could see some of the inside components moist with fuel, as well as the cotton on the bottom. Now, you're going to want to stand back a ways, because depending on how much fuel you've let out to pilot before you're familiar with the stove, this could be a pretty large initial flame. So you want to be outside or near some way to extinguish any sort of accidents, fire extinguisher or other sorts. That wasn't too bad this time. Now the flame is pretty subtle. I'm going to bring this into focus as the can secondaries at this point. There's about an 8-inch flame above. It's going to start to draw itself down, and you want to be able to be prepared to turn this first knob back open to allow some fuel to go back and feed the stove. Might test about anywhere 20-30 seconds. You should be okay to go. The more fuel that you enter in the beginning, the longer you'll have to let that burn off a little. You'll see some flicker in the flame. You know that the stove isn't quite ready. And the thing that's keeping it from being perfect right now is the inlet pipe has to actually boil the fuel to a vapor before it becomes that hot blue flame that you need. Another great selling point for this stove was its ability to simmer. As you see, we can take this all the way down to a low simmer up to what we just had, a full out fire. Now, if you're packing this up for the day, you would want to, or at least a long portion of your hike or whatnot, you'd want to close the first knob and let that fuel come out of the line before packing down. If you're going to start the stove back up in its position where it is, you could do it that way with this second knob. You may have to prime the stove again if it's been let sit for long enough. And remember, as neat as the stove is to have a feature to change it from different fuels like that, that ring becomes very hot when using. So you want to let that sit for quite a while before you go fiddling with it. I'm Silvio Paisano. This is the Brunton Vapor AF Expedition Stove. Post any questions you have. I'll try and answer them up. Take care.
ما شو تبرك
كشفت شركة سامسونج عن أول هاتف ذكي في العالم يمتاز بشاشة منحنية، وكما في بعض شاشات التلفزيون المنحنية فإن جالاكسي راوند يتمتع بشاشة من نوع أوليد فيها تقعر في وسطها. الهاتف سيكون متوفرا قريبا في كوريا الجنوبية فقط، ولم تكشف سامسونج بعد عن سعره أو موعد طرحه عالميا. طور باحثون في شركة ديزني خوارزمية تجعل من الأشياء التي تظهر على شاشة اللمس وكأنها أشياء ثلاثية الأبعاد. الفكرة تتركز على تغيير مستوى الفولتية في بعض نقاط الشاشة، ما يعطي إحساسا وهميا للأصابع وكأنها تتلمس شيئا ثلاثي الأبعاد. صممت شركة نست الأمريكية جهازا جديدا من أجهزة الإنذار عند اشتعال حريق في المنزل. نست بروتكت يتواصل مع تطبيق خاص في الهاتف الذكي، وفيه مستشعر للدخان ولغاز أول أكسيد الكربون وسماعة لبث رسالة صوتية عند الإنذار. الجهاز سيطرح في بريطانيا في نوفمبر تشرين الثاني بسعر 110 جنيهات استرلينية. وأخيرا أصبحت الروبوتات أكثر قدرة على محاكاة طريقة مشي الإنسان والحيوانات. الروبوت أطلس من تطوير شركة بوستن داينامكس والمدعوم ماليا من وزارة الدفاع الأمريكية يمكنه عبور المناطق الوعرة وأن يتوازن على رجل واحدة. أما الروبوت وايلد كات فيتوازن على 4 قوائم ويمكنه الجري بسرعة 16 ميلا في الساعة، وصمم ليستخدم في المعارك وساحات القتال. حيدر الطالبي، BBC.